and welcome to another episode of Lost Dogs here. Just a disclaimer, as always, for those of you who are new or just tuning in for the first time. In Lost Dogs, we do cover the murders, missing cases, and the killings here of journalists that we'll be discussing. So, this episode is going to be very. Sorry, a little under the weather today. But it's going to be very dark, and there are going to be some harsh themes here that we are discussing, so viewer discretion is going to be advised. I'll just start off by introducing myself, and then we'll go around the table here. I'm John Hayes, and I'll be your host and leading the discussion today.
My name is Dylan Rouse, joining again.
And my name is Austin Brown.
And Austin is new to the Lost Dogs channel. He's normally behind the scenes here, so it'll be nice to get some input from him and see what he has to think.
For sure.
So today's episode is going to focus on James, better known as Jim Leslie, and I'm calling it the Assassination of Jim Leslie here. So it's our third episode. Really excited to dive deep into this. So this particular story has a lot of twists and turns, but the main focus here is going to be on Jim Leslie. He was a journalist at Shreveport, Louisiana. He was also born there all the way back in 1937, so this is a pretty long time ago. He attended public schools there before graduating and immediately went to work for Shreveport Times as a reporter, so his own local newspaper publication there as a reporter. He had a wife named Carolyn and two sons, Scott and Mickey. So he worked for the Shreveport Times for a really long time. Which includes about 12 distribution areas in northern Louisiana and 3 counties in Texas. He also went on to work in public relations as well as an advertising executive. Most of his background there was mostly in political communications, so he really focused in on campaigning and helping politicians with their campaigns. So that's where our story really begins here. In 1974, a person by the name of George D'Artois. He's the Public Service Commissioner in Shreveport since 1962. He hires Leslie to work on his communications plan for re-election. He's facing some heat there, so he really needs all the help that he can get, and Leslie there is a really big influencer, and he knows his background, so he knows he'll do a good job. So this is going on, and he faces that greater challenge from a Republican competitor, but ultimately manages to gain re-election with the help of Leslie there. So, all the while, a team of reporters from the Shreveport Times, where Leslie also works, is starting to work on a new investigation series about D'Artois. They're worried he's gotten involved in some corruption there, and so they end up getting a tip-off to Leslie. Leslie has some information for them that they think can benefit them. So, he still has 2 checks from D'Artois from his previous campaign, and he notes that D'Artois had tried to pay him with city funds for his services rather than from his campaign account, which, if you guys aren't aware, that is very illegal. You have to pay with campaign funds, otherwise you're stealing money from the city, and that's a no-no. So, Leslie tells his friends and former co-worker, Elliot Stone Cipher, that he was also told to cash the checks and had been warned not to say anything about it. So, you know that's some shady stuff when the person you're helping is just like, hey, I'm going to give you some money from the city. You probably shouldn't blab too much about it. So fast forward 2 years here, the summer of 1976. Leslie is still involved in advertising at this point, but this time it's for a right-to-work bill under consideration in the state legislature. So you guys aren't aware here of this bill, but it is very controversial at the time. Labor unions are strongly opposed of it. They want nothing to do with it. It's basically giving the employees more rights in their workplace, giving them more access to better unions and better opportunities and more time for themselves, which the unions don't want there.
So the higher ups are
like
upset
all
about
over this,
it,
and they're just like, no, we do not want this to pass. So ultimately, through the help of Leslie and several other contributors, the bill ends up passing. Leslie celebrates the victory with his colleagues and returns later about 2 a.m., so he's all night celebrating, to his inn in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where the capital is, and they're celebrating. So he returns to his inn, and that's also the last place he's seen alive. So he parks in one of the few remaining parking spots near the hotel, but is shot and killed in a parking lot before he can even make it out of his car. So his family is obviously devastated there, and detectives can't really seem to make sense of how it was done. I do know that they found like a small opening in a fence with a wood paneling where they believe that the assassin was able to point the weapon out of and end up killing him. So, oh, did you have something you wanted to add?
So, why would that happen? Like, do you think so? Is it a conspiracy that maybe like is there some conspiracies about?
Well, there are a lot of factors to get into here. So, the biggest target, obviously, here is going to be George D'Artois. He is said to have been involved in the murder assassination, and people believe that he murdered Leslie as a result of his activities on the right to work bill, and or maybe for shaming his campaign by going to the Shreveport Times and giving that information to them, even though he was just like, don't do it. So that's the biggest smoking gun right there. So the East Baton Rouge Police Department investigate, but they say there is no evidence to support that theory. D'Artois does ultimately end up being arrested, though, on other charges in August of that same year in relation to Leslie's murder, and is forced to resign as the public service commissioner in Louisiana there. So this ends up happening, but it's not quite over. You think that this is it. Like, he's being arrested for this murder and charged, and everything's going to be wrapped up in a little bow.
George, right?
Yeah. But he ends up being released at the time.
Sounds about right.
Lack of evidence there, and it does sound about right. But they did have him on other charges, as you guys remember, for stealing those city funds there. So they're just like, okay, you've stolen over $30,000. It's time to go to court and serve your time there.
No, the Shreveport funds or Baton Rouge?
Shreveport.
Okay.
So D'Artois' trial was repeatedly postponed because of his poor health. He had some kind of heart condition there. But still, he's later arrested again in April of 1977 on charges of first-degree murder.
How old
again,
is he? How old is he?
He is a pretty old man. He's in like his 50s, 60s at this time. So this time, the warrant was signed by the district judge of Baton Rouge. D'Artois panics, attempts to barricade himself inside of his attic, and refuses to come out unless he is taken to Baton Rouge, the Baton Rouge County Jail instead of the Cato County Jail, because he says that the Baton Rouge Jail will have better treatment for his heart condition. So regardless of where he ended up, because of his health condition here, D'Artois has to undergo open heart surgery after having a heart attack. And here's the kicker. He dies on the table, leaving the murder of Jim Leslie to never be fully solved. No one is convicted, but Leslie is commended for making the state of Louisiana a better place to live and work.
That was just a spiral of events. I got a few questions.
Okay.
Was that all of it?
No, a little bit more. Fast forward to modern day. This happened in July 5th of 2012. So if you guys do remember a Mr. Elliot Stonecipher, he was Jim's co-worker there at the Shreveport Times. So he writes this article that's simply titled "The Murder of Jim Leslie" in 2012, and in that article he references that he's surprised by how many people don't know what happened to this day because it's been such a long period of time, and says he believes the Right to Work campaign had nothing to do with Leslie's death. In fact, he alleges that the only reason Leslie is dead is because he, quote, refused to be intimidated by D'Artois. He says he was actually in a meeting with Leslie shortly before his death, in which Leslie took his last phone call from D'Artois, and he says that D'Artois was still trying to get Leslie to settle everything without anyone being involved, more specifically here, the Shreveport Times. And when Leslie hangs up the phone, Stonecipher said that his words seemed to freeze time and all else. And Leslie said, "The man's gonna have me killed."
So I mean, is it really surprising that it was swept under the rug and nobody knows about what happened? Because
Yeah.
for me, it looks like, I mean, that's how it is. It seems like that all the time with not even cases like this with race cases or cases of just other things. But no, it doesn't surprise me that it was swept under the rug, especially if it was a conspiracy and somebody higher up did that to him or got him killed or something.
Yeah, I mean, you're in a position of power, so you probably have some pull. And if you were able to get away with stealing $30,000 in city funds before anyone caught you, that's kind of fishy to me. Stone Cipher also said, and this will wrap up my part of the story, that not telling anyone that Leslie had said this was his biggest regret, because he feels like if he had raised that red flag, then Deartois would have been caught sooner if he's even the person responsible. We'll never know, because he had that heart attack and died.
My biggest question is, how was the murder ruled when police investigated it? Because, I mean, it could have just been labeled as a robbery gone wrong or something like that, but
What was
is there
so
any evidence it was just a straight murder?
it was so inconspicuous. Like, the crime scene, they weren't able to find any direct evidence other than that wood paneling and that fencing to prove anything. So they just looked at it as, this is so advanced, and normally if you're going to commit a petty crime or shoot someone at 2 a.m. in the morning, there's going to be some trace of evidence. You're normally just a little bit sloppy. And I think that's what the police noticed here and investigators noticed here, that this wasn't sloppy. This was professional, high-grade work. They weren't able to find anything other than this, and no one wanted them to find anything other than this.
So what connected, what was his name? Deartois. What connected him with the murder? Or what made them think, there was a connection?
I think it was mostly just the fact that there was that history there with Leslie, and the fact that Leslie had come out and publicly spoken about Deartois' wrongdoings and what he had done in the past. So he had a really good motive for wanting to do this.
So just motive basically.
Yes.
Say it again?
Deartois.
Deartois. Did he have any past prior history before any of this with him?
See, that's the thing. Their connection started with the campaigning, so they had never met each other prior to this campaigning.
But does he have a record?
Does Deartois have a record?
Before
no, not that I know of.
Okay, all right.
But then again, he's a politician.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. So he probably.
Well, I don't know if you guys have ever been to Shreveport before, but it's a sketchy city.
Yeah.
It's a little Baton Rouge casino spot.
Yeah, it's not too far out of the ordinary to imagine that something like this could happen.
It wouldn't surprise me at all, having a city official linked up with the unions and then taking on a journalist. And you said he did PR as well.
Yeah, he did a hybrid of sorts. He was a journalist for Shreveport Times because that's where he grew up, and he had that association there, but he also went on to do PR and specifically political communication, so he worked a lot of campaigning, and Deartois was his tipping point there.
Oh, I'm glad he kept his morals and didn't take city funds.
Me too, because it has to be difficult being in a position like that where, on one hand, you have your public relations brain telling you to do one thing, but you also have to consider ethics and morals here going into it as well.
Yeah, that's a very ethical gray line, mixing journalism and PR. And they're kind of the same thing, but it's a big ethical line between them. But so he got picked up 2 years later for a murder of, who did you say?
No, it's still the same murder. They just
finally
actually had
arrested him.
Incriminating evidence.
Okay, I heard that wrong.
So for me, I'm thinking that Deartois, yeah, he probably got him executed. Him and the labor are the higher up people over the unions or for the companies. Yeah, it just makes sense because did that law have them losing money or
I mean,
what do you think that law really?
Obviously, you are going to lose money there because you have to stop. like treating your employees like they're just machines and actually give them access
Compensation.
to benefits and
Mhm.
resources that they didn't have previously. So obviously there are going to be a lot of people upset here and a lot of higher ups
Yeah, a
that
lot of
go
higher
way
ups
above
upset. Exactly.
that are able to probably do things like this and get away with it compared to the average citizen just going up and shooting someone.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, it just makes total sense to
So,
me.
do they think that Deotois committed the murder himself, or did he hire somebody?
See, that's the thing.
I mean, if he had heart conditions, I highly doubt a
Yeah.
80-year-old something man
Like,
would.
that's the suspicious thing here because investigators are just like, so you're this high up official, and yet you were able to orchestrate this assassination attempt. So there has to be like this gray line here of like, is someone else involved in this who could possibly be able to help you with this, but we'll never know because he had a heart attack and died on the table.
That's another point too. Why did he want to go to that certain hospital so bad that he was so sure could help him with his condition, and he ended up dying? I'm wondering if he wanted to go there
If
because
he had like an inside
he
connection.
knew somebody there and kind of planned on committing suicide in a way, just so he didn't have to serve that murder sentence. Because when you're an old man with a heart condition, you're not made out for prison.
True.
So, what was that? What do y'all think? Is there anything that journalists could do to protect themselves after this? Except, a gun. Like,
Armed
Ultimately,
journalists.
I was a little upset with this particular story because the only thing that Jim Leslie really ended up getting out of it was a scholarship that was named after him. And not to say that it's wrong to give college students money, but come on, you would think that they'd pass like some kind of law, work on that there'd be someone who caught up with this other than this one reporter friend that he knows to help him out. And I just really think that we need to dig deeper here and look into better ways to protect journalists from situations like this. Because even last week, we had a journalist that straight up disappeared without a trace, and nobody knows where he is. And now we have an assassination, a potential assassination for hire attempt, assassination for hire attempt here, and nothing.
Well,
yeah.
No one knows anything.
Like Austin was saying, journalists should also kind of look out for themselves more
Yeah.
and realize that they are in a position of danger. And, carrying a gun, that might be a good idea if you're doing some shady business just to protect yourself personally, but also communicate with your coworkers about what you're doing, like our story last week.
Yeah.
Start, actually let people know what's going on. And so whenever you do end up going missing,
Yeah, if you feel in
people can
danger.
know what's going on.
Yeah, cause like if you feel in danger, did he do anything except for
Said the phone call.
yeah, except for
Yeah.
letting somebody know, and he only let one person know, right? So
Yeah.
maybe that's where he messed up at.
I
And-
just don't think that he felt like there was any danger like in what he did, and maybe that was his biggest mistake there, is that he just kind of laughed it off and felt like he was comfortable enough to just wander out and do all these controversial things and nothing was going to happen. Not to say that we're blaming him here, but in the sense that like you have to be aware that your profession is dangerous and that there are unfortunately consequences for telling the public
The
things
truth.
like this. For
Yeah.
telling the truth, yeah.
Kind of yeah, I was like, sometimes if it doesn't go for the higher ups, then that's that's what they want to do. They'll try to get rid of you. So I feel like there definitely should be something in place for maybe not a witness protection, but like, I don't know, journalist protection, order, I don't know, something of that nature. But just like if you feel in danger from a story that you have written or something like that published, then you should have some means of protection from getting hurt or whatever the case may be. So
Getting that information out there, letting people know what you're working on. What was Delatour? Pronouncing it right, Delatour. What was his official position again?
He was the public service commissioner in Shreveport for
How much
a while.
How much power does a public service commissioner have.
You're over
where
money.
He can.
Money
You're over
talks.
money, yeah.
If you're able to steal $30,000 from the
Nah,
city,
That's right.
like you obviously have a lot of because the average person can't just steal $30,000 without someone knowing about
Or
it.
even the average person in the state, that's working in the state or for the government.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
You're gonna get caught eventually, and he obviously didn't expect to get caught.
I don't understand how not, but
Yeah, you hired a journalist to run your campaign. Like, why didn't you think?
yeah, if you're gonna get a journalist, get a dirty journalist.
Oh,
So that's just from my crime point of view.
yeah.
Any other thoughts, y'all?
Protect yourselves out there if you're a journalist. Protect yourselves, let people know where you're going, what you're doing, and don't keep your cards so close to your chest that if you go up missing, no one can find you.
So, do we think that there's anything that his friend and coworker Stone Cipher could have done differently here after hearing that information?
Talked a little bit more about that phone call. I don't think he should have waited so long for, to release it in a book. It was in a book, right?
Yeah.
That he wrote like 30 years later, something like that. I mean, I would have talked more about that right away, and maybe he just didn't think, because he got arrested.
Yeah. Why did he not come out and speak about it right after he got killed?
I mean, I'm sure that he did, and I'm sure it was a lot bigger back then. But you
Yeah.
have to think about the limitations of technology then.
Yeah, for
compared
sure.
to now.
For sure.
And like even trying to resurrect something that is that old and
This is in 2012, though, right?
he spoke in 2012, but
This
this
is back
happened all the
in-
way back in 19.
Yeah, no social media.
1930,
No social
1970
media.
area, so
Definitely no social media. No internet.
was like
Yeah.
this.
It was just
probably
TV,
located
right?
Just to Shreveport.
Yeah.
Really.
TV had just started,
Mhm.
right?
This was definitely like on the cusp of the print TV.
Yeah,
news
okay.
area.
So still black and white television, for sure. Only way you was gonna let somebody know was through the phone, right? That was the main means of communication
Yeah.
back
well,
then.
Oh,
Okay.
1974. And it's not,
You
not
said
too-
74?
Not,
Yeah,
not,
74.
not too long ago. He was born in 1937, but this happened in the.
Okay,
70s.
so yeah, TV was around.
Yeah, TV was around.
Huh.
That was
I wonder
kind
if he
of a
went to the
prime
news
time.
station. I wonder if he wouldn't, let the news station know. His friend, like, hey, I think this man got killed or whatever.
There were just so many different ways that this could have gone differently. It's
Yeah.
just so sad that it
Was
ended
he,
up.
was he a
this
print
way.
journalist or?
He was a print journalist.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, it's about time. Any final thoughts, y'all? Our producer's telling us to wrap it up.
I think that's it.
Rest
Dylan,
in
you got
peace.
anything?
Rest in peace, Jim.
Well, that's all the time that we have for today. Make sure to give us a follow on Twitter at Lost Dogs Pod, or like us on Facebook at Lost Dogs Podcast. And if you have any story ideas, be sure to send them to lostdogsok@gmail.com. That's it for this episode of Lost Dogs. We'll see you all next time.